So since I'm driving, I can't put stuff on the agenda, but I'd love to cover the KubeAdmin 1.6 stuff. We need to pull together a change log. I think Luke, you were going to sign up to do some of that, right?
Yeah, I am signed up to do that. I'm happy to do that. When do we need it by?
I don't know. We should. We should talk to the person. But I'm happy to, like, you know, let's try and figure out who we actually deal with. I think the release coordinator from gosh, his name's escaping me right now, is probably the right guy to talk to about figuring out who's handling that. We need to let's see, we need to finish up other documentation. I'm on the hook for some of the token stuff. I can try and clean up some other documentation as necessary. We probably need to do a full stack test with and collect and poke all the network providers on the RBAC stuff again, right?
Yep, that's true.
On the deb packages for 1.6, turn on the secure flags for the kubelets. The RPM has not been done yet, so we need to make sure that we get the flags changed in the RPM. And I have at least one customer that's been poking me that's kind of like scared that we remove old versions from the repositories. And so there's a bug that we should track and figure out what we need to do around to make sure that we don't delete the 1.5 packages from the dev repository, so that, because it's like 1.6 is a breaking change. Folks are going to want to keep working for a while. We should give them a way to do that.
Yeah, definitely. We've been bitten by the same problem at Weaveworks, where like even point releases, the old debs and RPMs just get deleted. So we need to stop doing that.
Right. Yeah, and so this is why, I mean, this is why, so, and then the other thing that we should do is on the, and this is just a general thing, is have instructions for how to install the latest 1.12 of Docker, because we're going to start failing prereqs for the latest version of Docker. And so, like, we should, you know, like, those aren't officially supported, so we should probably just notify users of what's going on there and give them instructions on the easy way to get the old versions of Docker.
Yes.
I have those for Ubuntu that I've tested out. I'm not sure about Debian or Red Hat derivatives. So that's a bit of a laundry list, but I think that's all stuff that's going to bite users if we don't get it dealt with.
Yep, I am recording this call, so I will go back over the recording later and make sure that the minutes are up to date. And then, Joe, we should sync quickly in the next couple of days to make sure that we're on that accordingly.
So that's I mean, any other sort of like last minute sort of like odds and ends, rough edges that we need to smooth over that we know of?
Well, I was planning on like doing more testing as I was doing documenting. It may be that other little rough edges come up during that testing, so it's difficult to tell in advance. I can probably do that Thursday or Friday this week.
Okay. Sounds great. I'm going to be at GCP Next later this week, so it's going to be a busy couple of days coming up. One of the other things, and this is longer term, it's not going to make it for the 1.6 release, is all the release sort of scripts and architecture for building the devs, pushing, using these things, all that stuff is only written to be run by Googlers. And so what it means is that the best we can do for testing sort of the latest KubeAdmin is to sort of like cobble some stuff together with the hypercube image and manual pushing and stuff like that. So it's really not a proxy for sort of the full release artifacts. And so I think probably in the 1.7 cycle, we want to be able to do earlier end-to-end testing that involves building the devs and like doing everything end-to-end, right? And some of that may be manual, some of it, you know, but at least having that capability, I think, is going to be necessary.
Hey, Joe. So I have a batch of PRs that should be ready this afternoon that fix our current continuous integration testing end-to-end for KubeAdmin. So it it builds the debs. It brings up a cluster using the newest version of kubeadmin. I'm also hoping to make that a PR blocking job later this week if it's pretty stable. But all that infrastructure is there. It just keeps getting broken because we changed the CLI UX and the test infra keeps getting a lot of changes that they don't necessarily update this particular job because it sticks out like a sore thumb. It keeps getting refactored, but I'm hoping to have that all in place later today.
Okay, so like I still think that there's this issue, like, and I have some PRs that I submitted to the release depot, and I think they'll probably get held up in the 1.6 stuff because everybody's busy. But there's, we should still be able to do that whole thing when you're not running under Jenkins, when you're doing it manually, because like right now, like all that stuff just assumes that you're at Google and assumes that you have, user local Google that's writable, and crap like that, So there's a bunch of odds and ends there. So I think we just need to probably just write down how to do that and make sure that it can be done outside of Jenkins.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you also interested in doing something like the Docker and Docker that someone could just spin up a cluster and run those tests locally? Is that something that's interesting? Because I haven't jumped into that very much.
I think, so one of the things that we're going to try and do, I have a doc writer who wants to do this in sort of a quarter of her time, is start getting some of the here's how you build and test Kubernetes as a whole, right? And so I think one of the things that we can do if we can get this stuff down is that we can start replacing some of the local cluster stuff with a setup that is, a good balance between being real in terms of multi-node and also being fast. And I'm hopeful that the Docker and Docker stuff can actually play a part of that. I haven't had the time to really dig in and figure out sort of how close that is to reality and whether that's going to be useful for people testing stuff out.
So Ilya and I kicked the tires on it, and it seemed good, although I did notice that it was disabling pre-flight checks, so that was a little suspicious.
But did you see, Luke, for the Docker and Docker stuff about supporting the kubeproxy flag variable for something that happens with kubeproxy when it's inside because it expects to be on the local network or something? There's a flag you have to pass to the kube. Have you seen this issue?
I haven't gone that deep on it, so
okay.
No.
So that was something that I was jumping into, and I saw that Ivan Forth, one of the guys from Marantis, had opened up an issue on Kubernetes. I can link the issue later. But it seems like there are some limitations within Docker and Docker. So.
Okay. Well, I still think I would love to be able to take my local build that I think is good and build enough artifacts that I could launch like a GC or an Amazon cluster off of those things and have it come up where it's essentially, the exact same flow as if it were a release, with like maybe a single flag change.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at that. I mean, it's going to take a while. It's not going to be the regular flow, but I think we should be able to test that out of band.
Yeah, I agree. It is possible already if you are familiar with the build tooling and everything and do a lot of manual hacks. But I totally agree we should make it like an official and documented thing. Maybe in time for 1.7.
Yeah, you have to edit right now the release stuff to push the images to anything beyond the official repos, right? Which, nobody but Googlers have access to push to.
Is there anyone on the call from Canonical? Because Red Hat has the atomic install, which allows you to install containers to which you can bypass the repo entirely. So long as you have the containers and a systemd unit file, which basically is the kicker, then you can bypass the repos entirely as your baseline bootstrap.
Well, I'm not sure I mean, the whole point here is that we want to be able to essentially test the user experience as much as possible end to end. So if we do something that typical users aren't going to be doing, then I think we end up missing out here.
Yeah, I think we just need to have a way of like creating the debs as they would be if it were released, right? That's what you're saying?
Right. The debs and the
RPMs.
the whole deal.
Right?
Yeah.
You can do I have to look into it, but you can totally do local overrides. I mean, for Red Hat, you always can.
Okay.
For the devs, it's already possible to do local builds. Just git clone the release repo, cd debian, and go run build go, I think. So that will do it and produce local deb files, but still, as you say, it's not pushed anywhere or something. So you then have to like install them manually. But yeah, we'll look into it. But I guess that's a later issue.
That's a 1.7 thing for sure.
Yeah. Let's continue.
Cool. So, Joe, did you have anything else, or should we go through the agenda?
Oh, sorry, I kind of hijacked things. I just wanted to like get off my head sort of the nitty-gritty sort of little issues that I know we had to finish up. So that's all I had.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, and I'm glad you did that. Cool. So, I mean, I'll just drive us through the agenda then. So, KFox Quadruple One is suggesting that we discuss the option for using Helm for packaging low-level components.
Yeah, so I've deployed a bunch of Kubernetes clusters now, and you go onto the web and you curl something from like Weave for a plugin, and there's hard-coded IP addresses in it that don't tend to fit well in the networks that I've got, so I have to set across them. And it would be really nice to have like a templating engine for some of the pieces that we have. The dashboard's similar. I mean, when you go to update it, you have to pull down the file, tweak the image versions, and push it back up. That could be something like a Helm upgrade dashboard.
So I think it's an interesting idea. Like the key question for me is, does Helm work before there's a pod network?
Yes. So I have Helm running on one of my systems in a static pod because in that particular case I needed very tight authentication, and there's just no way to do that in Kubernetes today. So putting it in a static pod allowed me to wrap IP tables around it and lock it down. So yes, there's a path forward there. I also talked with some of the core Helm developers, and they're interested in that use case.
Can I ask, would Helm automate this? So, for example, you said the cluster, like I guess the DNS IP is a classic example, right? The .10, where it is.
Mm-hmm.
Would Helm prompt you to enter the DNS IP, or would it pull it from the cluster? So
Helm has values for its templating engine, so the user can override them very easily on the command line. So they could do a Helm install weave -- set IP range equals whatever, and then it would fill in that value provided by the user if they don't choose the defaults into the template as it instantiates it.
So,
right, but can Helm pull the correct DNS IP from a cluster configuration that's already there? Like I think.
No.
No, I don't think it would, but it allows you at least the flexibility as a user to override it without setting through a bunch of YAML.
Well,
Yeah.
So I think it's important. You mentioned two things that we would get out of Helm here. One of them is a templating engine, and the other one is the ability to essentially hit a dashboard to do upgrades. I think it's important to separate out those. One of the concerns that I have about Helm is that the templating and that dashboard and that stuff is all combined. I don't see any reason why a templating engine can't be broken out, and we can still maintain something that doesn't bring on the weight of actually running yet another server-side component. In terms of upgrading, like, the upgrade procedure for your cluster, including these low-level things, can't all be done from the Helm dashboard, right? Helm is not going to drive the upgrade of the cluster itself. So I just don't think that the usability for that particular part of the system really, in my mind, justifies some of the weight of running another server-side component.
So a couple of things there. They have a plugin to Helm right now to do a client-side templating using the same exact rules that they use for the server side. They seem willing to merge that into their client if that's a desired feature, so you wouldn't have to use the server to instantiate things. So that kind of handles that one case. As for, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we should still, kubeadmin should still deploy the DNS thing. Because right now it auto detects the cluster IP, the service subnet, and checks it and sets the right value. But I think it would be really useful like to document that after now you got your cluster running, and here are some commands. You can pull Helm from this apt-get repository as well, the same, for example. And then we have some starter files for you here. Just like hit Helm install stable.dashboard, and here is your Kubernetes dashboard. And so I think this is more of a docs issue. Like after you have your cluster running, what do you do? And
well, it's a docs issue, and it's also all the upstream plugins and stuff right now assume that you're just going to kubectl create-f URL, and they have to split them up into like Canal has like 3 or 4 of them now because they have different options that you may want, and they have no templating engine, so they can't like write just one with a couple options that you can tweak. So part of it's building the community around the idea of having low-level packages that people can consume.
I agree. Yeah.
I think fundamentally Helm is an application-focused project, and I worry about dragging it into something where it essentially becomes required on every single cluster, because over time it's going to grow to take on more and more application-facing roles. And I think it's important that we maintain the mission for projects like kubeadmin to be able to scale very, very small. And so I'm very, very, very hesitant of adding more required server-side components here.
So having a template engine, I think, is really important to this, and having some way of easily performing upgrades on things. And right now, those are kind of lacking. You may be right, and Helm might be overkill, but their kind of mission seems to align pretty well with just having some upstream packages that you can upgrade, or go through the regular life cycle of a Kubernetes application. And like the dashboard and some other things really are just applications.
Yeah, so I think we should distinguish between kubeadm and Kubernetes core and the applications you run on it. I think the only thing that's kind of needed here is a document that, like, after you have your kubeadm cluster, you should maybe install Helm, run Helm init, and then you have a lot of options to install the dashboard. You might, Canal may have some Helm repos for you as well, and makes it easy for you. But if you still want to go the like hard way, you should still be able. So I don't think this is it's more of a docs issue. I don't think we should, like Joe said, incorporate it in core and make it mandatory. Definitely encourage people to use it for their applications after they've installed kubeadm.
And maybe some kind of support, at least for handing off nicely. How should I say that? So, like, for example, if kubeadm ends up deploying kube proxy, and the user might want to use a Helm package to manage that after Cube ADM has done its job, to have enough information that a Helm upgrade Cube proxy would work.
Yeah. Justin maybe have something there. Just a quick note. We're gonna, work in progress already to split up Cube ADM into phases. I have a design document for it. And I expect it to be ready in 1.7. We have 2 of 10 commands maybe implemented. So in 1.7, I expect you to be able to run all the phases individually, and you can omit proxy and DNS if you like. Justin said.
Okay, that would work.
Justin, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think. So I think there's a general move to try to make sure we don't have to use templating. So to replace templating with component config, and so in other words, you would have a config map, and I think then, and the config map would be correct by default, and the idea is the user would change the config map if they wanted to change something, and the controller or whatever it was would automatically reload. I think what's unsolved and a proposal I've seen is a sort of shared cluster level config map, which would have, I guess, like your suffix, your DNS suffix, your DNS IP, anything that's like the grab bag of things that is cross things.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's still a bunch of stuff outside of config maps that still may need to be templated, like image tags. I may want to go from 1.7.2 to 1.7.3.
Right, and I think you raise a great point there, and that Helm gives you a great experience in terms of upgrading. And I can tell you what COPS does, which is what COPS has a small wrapper around. And I owe a doc describing it and trying to unify the various proposals out there. It has a small wrapper around kubectl, which basically, so we add another manifest file, which is a list of all the versions of Cube Dashboard that are available. And you can go into the COPS repo, and I think it's in add-ons. You can see some examples. And so you can do, it's called channels for now, because I don't know why I chose that name. But anyway, channels, I think it's channels, add-ons, add-on dashboard or something, and it will install the dashboard. You can do it keeps some metadata around so you can upgrade easily, but it is just a very thin wrapper around kubectl apply. And yeah, the problem is it doesn't do templating yet. And there are, I think the point is there are a lot of templating solutions out there, and there was a proposal in core, and it seems to have stopped moving forward. So maybe we should take that on, look at the Helm in SIG-cluster-lifecycle, look at the Helm template, look at the other ones that are out there, decide whether we want to take on the complexity and weight of Helm. It might not even be that heavy, right? And then
so mostly what Helm is a set of templates, which are Go templating language templates, and then a bit of YAML to variables so that the template engine can pull them back out. It's been very lightweight in my experience.
But here's the thing: if Helm had a completely client-side mode, I'd feel a lot comfortable around this stuff. Especially when we start thinking about the security implications of actually changing stuff in Cube system.
Right.
Because you may ideally, I'm a little bit scared of running something like Helm that grabs stuff randomly off the internet and applies it with root privileges to my cluster, right?
Right. Well, so they also have it works similarly to Yum. So you have a set of repositories you can add or remove to your Helm server,
right.
And it will only pull from there. So you can have a trusted set of repositories if you want to lock it down. Right,
but there's a huge, with the server-side component, then there's a confused deputy danger there that for me is a little bit scary. So Justin was saying, and I saw the chat come up here. Is there a client-only mode for it, or is that something that you said they were talking about?
There isn't today outside of a plugin, but it should be relatively easy, I think, for them to add it. And they've started to talk about it a little bit. So I can circle back with them and see if they're interested in supporting that use case, because that might be a good solution.
I think it would be good to see if Helm are interested in going down that route. I also think it's nice to see the inside of your car, Joe. I also think that it may well be worth breaking this conversation off into a little working group meeting where people who are interested in this topic can sort of spend a whole hour bashing it out, because I think there's a lot of moving parts. I'm supportive in principle of figuring out how the Kubernetes community, and it really is the whole packaging thing is just as much about people as it is technology. I'm supportive of finding a way of getting some of the attributes that Helm offers, but I'm pretty sure that people are going to have lots of opinions about the implementation.
Sure.
So can I suggest that we have a separate meeting that people can show up to if they're interested in this topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's continue.
Then we can get through the rest of the agenda. Who would volunteer to send an email to the list proposing that meeting? Kevin, perhaps?
Yeah, I could do that.
Is that okay? You sure? Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'd be happy to join, and I'm sure other people here would. Okay, so next on the agenda is a few items from Justin. Justin, do you want to take us through these quickly?
Yeah, I can try. The first one might be one that is more kicks off another sub-working group, I suspect, because it is sort of a big and thorny topic. But if I give a sort of introduction to what it is, then hopefully people that can decide whether they're interested, which is the idea of, we have these different pieces that install a Kubernetes cluster, like CloudFormation, Terraform, kubeadm, kops, and Kubernetes itself manages some resources. And the challenge, well, what kops did, which is probably wrong, is it does both the role of CloudFormation and of kubeadm currently. And we're going to start using kubeadm for some of that. But it makes the line really questionable about like who starts owning resources. Where do we want, wherever we're going, who do we want to own resources between the provisioning tool that the user is using, CloudFormation, Terraform, kops, Ansible, whatever it is, between the ring up tool, kubeadm, kops does some of it, like there are kubeanywhere, right? All of those guys. And then Kubernetes itself. And I certainly think that there's a lot which kops does today, which I would like to get into Kubernetes itself. For example, I think it would be amazing if Kubernetes managed instances, nodes, so that you could, I mean, it already does when you have the autoscaler, for example. And I think so I'd like to hear today from anyone like has any particular views or like learnings from where they are, but otherwise I propose that I send out an invitation for like a sub-working group to try to figure out like what our end goal should be in terms of, does Kubernetes own instances? Does kubeadm own the keys? So I'm not really clear on how keys and certs work in kubeadm exactly, like in terms of ownership. And I think it would be good to get that figured out. And you know, what resources would we expect to have been provisioned by the administrator / provisioning tool, be it CloudFormation, Terraform, or someone typing on the AWS console, right? That is what that topic is about, and it is presumably not something we can fix in 5 minutes. Joe has his hand up.
So I want to say, I think this sounds like a really interesting topic. I think one of the things that we've taken a little bit of a different tack with kubeadmin than other tools is that we have been willing to push some of the stuff necessary to make things streamlined into core, right? The bootstrap token is one of those things. The TLS stuff that Mike did, right, is another one of those things that fundamentally simplify how easy it is to bring up clusters. And I think that extending that into, like, as we look, I mean, right now the cloud provider is a big bag of crap, right? It's in terms of like everything's glommed together in terms of all the different roles, right? It's not a bag, it's a kitchen sink, right? In terms of like everything gets sort of put in there. If we can find ways to sort of factor that kitchen sink out and then make some of it be activatable by kubeadmin and sort of move those lines a little bit, I think that seems really interesting to me. And I could imagine, this plays in some to the last discussion, that maybe like you use your CloudFormationist type of thing to bring up a master node that ends up being a zygote, and then it manages, and then you install some sort of extension that is a sort of Uber cloud provider that then, you know, scales nodes past that. And so, you know, that won't work in all situations, but I think that seems totally interesting and reasonable to me.
Yeah, so I've been working on the Cola Kubernetes project, and I've used OpenStack for many years. One of the things that's kind of on the back burner that I'd like to play with at some point is to see if the Kubernetes autoscaler would work with ironic bare metal deployment. So you could use a very small core Kubernetes deployment to launch all of its other compute nodes. So I think that kind of fits in with that.
Yeah, to me, I don't know. Instances might sound as a that third-party objects would be a great fit. I don't know, and operator / controller something. I don't know.
I agree. It doesn't necessarily need to be in core. The third-party versus custom type is a separate argument, which I propose.
Yeah. But anyway, the cloud cloud stuff in general is on its way out, and we should sync with Tim Hockin and Siddhartha Mani from Rancher. About that, it's work in progress, and I think you should already be able to use the Cloud Controller Manager. It's binary in the release start. That should be exactly like the controller loops in Controller Manager right now. So I think it should work out of the box with AWS and GC and everyone else. And the hard part is volumes and then removing things from the kubelet. That's the non-straightforward task. But anyway, it would be a really interesting discussion. So please file a working meeting, propose a time or something.
I will do that.
Just to give an example, I mean, I wanted to mention that we found it rather quite hard to have Kubernetes managing an ELB and us managing the DNS, right? So I know there's work on the DNS and the ELB type stuff would improve, but we found it a lot easier to actually manage that externally. Both of those things. Essentially, we use Terraform for setting up DNS and ELB, and when we move from one cluster to another, essentially, then you doing upgrades that way, for example, or just otherwise having Kubernetes keeping the ELB wasn't quite useful for us, so we actually ended up settling whole cloud provider integration entirely.
Is that because you? Yeah, we can talk about that separately, but I'm guessing
just an example, right? So I think the kind of thing we're looking at is it's going to be up to the user to draw these boundaries. We will just have to provide a way for them to draw those boundaries, describe where they want those boundaries.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, which is that I imagine that many users are going to have opinions about this, right? I can imagine many users feeling quite uncomfortable about their Kubernetes cluster being able to provision more VMs on their infrastructure, for example, depending on various security and compliance requirements that they may have. So I think we just need to be a bit careful.
I agree with that, but I think we also should. I think we have also fallen into the trap of not providing this is a good solution that works for a lot of people, and you may have perfectly valid reasons to not do it, but you probably don't.
Yeah, and in Cola, we use the philosophy of batteries included. You can use the batteries or you could not. Yeah, it's up to you. Yep,
that seems reasonable. Okay, great. So Justin, that's on you to propose some times for people to get together.
That sounds good.
To dive in more, that's great. Oh, there's a couple more items, so I'll hand the mic back to you.
Yeah, these two are probably going to be faster. So this is one I'm also going to be proposing another working group, but this is IAM policies. GCE now has some form of IAM. AWS obviously has IAM that is horrifically complicated, so no one understands it. And this is about locking down the IAM roles so that pods don't get access to the node IAM permissions, and also trying to give pods particular IAM permissions, and ideally letting Kube API server, Kube controller manager, Kube scheduler have specific IAM permissions that are just what they need, although that is really hard. But that is the goal. That is our, like, if we could have everything there, that would be great. There's just a pull request that went in. I think it's going to be in 1.6, which sets up a rule which will isolate pods. So that's a hook, but it doesn't let us assign additional roles. So I don't know whether, maybe I'll start with more of a spreading a paper or like a feature, adding more documents to a feature, and then propose a working group in a couple of weeks or something if there's anyone that's interested. But
so where did that change go in? So where did that change go in? Did that go into cops? Or did that go into?
No, Kubernetes. Let's see. It went into
the Kube proxy thing.
Oh, it went into the KubeOps scripts.
All right, we should steal. So here's the deal. So like, I think like the overarching goal here is like we should make it easier for people to turn on the cloud provider for Kube when using kubeadmin, right? Whether that's documentation, whether that's tooling, whether that's extensions. And I think, you know, documenting and getting crisper about sort of how you interact with the IAM systems and sort of the implications of that, I think falls under that. Does that sound reasonable, Justin?
It sounds good. My expectation was the Kube IAM would be, or the IAM thing would be separate, but then they put it into core. But there's definitely a piece there has to be a firewall piece that has to be established, and we just haven't figured out actually how to do the firewall piece correctly yet. And this is certainly at least half of the puzzle that they put into core, but I don't think it's the other half. This is we are not insecure anymore half of the puzzle.
If you could send that out to folks, or at least drop it in the Slack channel, I'd love to see it if you have that PR link handy.
The PR is linked in the minutes already.
Okay, great.
So that's sweet. That.
Yep.
Let's take the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
The next one is, I think everyone on the list should have been invited to COPS office hours. So this is basically about trying to keep SIG-cluster-lifecycle for the cross-cutting concerns now that there are so many tools. And I guess BootCube as well should be in there, although I don't know whether maybe BootCube is more like actually working on integrating with what is the correct approach long-term. But
I think we're more ripping bits of code out of BootCube. I'm not sure.
Synergizing. Yes, yeah, so maybe that's...
With permission.
Anyway, maybe BootCube is an exception. But like certainly, like COPS has a lot of discussion about things that are specific to COPS and are not of general interest to like how should we run a cluster in general. And I'm sure like kubeadm has the same, and Cargo has the same, and other... I'm not trying to exclude anyone, so if I forgot anyone, just put them in. But we added the COPS office hours, which are sort of a developer touch base, ask us anything, discuss your PRs, how should I do this type of thing, like, which we do every other week. And the intention of doing that is that way we don't have to have the discussion in this forum. And I think if the other projects did that, I think that would be awesome also, because we're already like running out of time, right? And so we want to keep, the more time we can keep for the bigger issues, the better, I think.
So I'm supportive in principle of this, but my like real world practical problem is time, and like having another hourly meeting per week or whatever would be a bit of an issue for me personally. That may be exacerbated by the time zones, and there's limited overlap per day and so on. But what we could try doing is splitting this meeting in half and say that, I don't know which way round would be better, but if we're going to talk about kubeadm stuff and we're going to talk about big picture stuff in the meeting, then we can just say, well, then let there be a convention that we will try and do it like in a certain order so that people can show up to the first or second half. or both, depending on their preference.
I certainly don't mind cutting this meeting in half and saying like the first half is like making 2 meetings in the existing time slot. I am all for less meetings of less total duration meeting time is definitely a good thing for me.
Any objections?
I don't know.
We may not always. Sorry.
I think it's actually a very good idea to have a separate dedicated meeting. In some cases, it could possibly overrun. And it's okay as long as everybody on it is okay. Right?
Especially if it's only one every other week, you know.
Yeah, I think it would make sense to have a separate meeting for like CubeADM only issues that are like more developer focused than like the full cluster lifecycle thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think everybody
on a week as well.
Yeah, and I don't think everybody has to be on that call, right? And we could rather spend time, like, I don't know, helping out new contributors and things like that.
That could also make sense. We have a lot of support tickets, too many to handle. So, yeah, we could invite them as well then. But something like every other week would make sense, at least initially, I think.
So, Lucas, are you proposing that we keep SIG-cluster-lifecycle as 1 hour and add every other week CubeADM office hours?
Yeah. I think that would be good. Ciao.
And this would be in addition to the 1 hour?
Yeah.
So every week we'll have an hour, and then we'll have an extra half an hour or whatever every other week?
If there's need to.
Yeah, I would like to start an experiment where we err on the side of like less meeting time, just because I'm rammed, and I know a lot of other people on this call are rammed, but my preference would be for like, can we start with the cut the meeting in half experiment, and if we find that we run out of time, like repeatedly in one of those halves, then we can expand it.
Have you ever like succeeded stopping on time?
I was also going to say, how many times have our current meetings gone and we haven't covered everything? So I think trying to cram now 2 things into the space of 1 thing that used to always almost go over, I don't know how that's going to work, right? We typically don't get through the entire agenda in 1 hour. Like last week we didn't, the week before we didn't.
Yeah, we've typically only had sort of 10% overflow or so. But what I would say is, like, we're talking about mostly discussing the same content that we already discuss in the same amount of time, just being a bit more organized about like different categories. So Joe's doing something weird with his fingers, which I think needs to move on maybe. I'm going to make a call on this.
We could take the stuff we do now and sort it, right? So this is me sorting, right?
That was sorting fingers.
Right. That was bubble sort.
That was bubble. But I mean, a lot of this finger sort. There you go. A lot of this is like it's the same stuff, but we're all kind of jumbled, and we tend to ramble, and we don't stay on topic. And so, like, maybe if we're more disciplined and we actually sort of like try and partition it so that, like, you know, we front load or back load the CubeAdmin stuff, that seems reasonable.
Okay, that sounds good.
I don't know if we'll do it, but it seems like a good plan.
I'm gonna make a call on this and say that we try it by splitting the meeting. Then the only question remaining is, do we try and do CubeADM stuff first, or do we try and do big picture stuff first? Which order would be more useful to people? I think it doesn't really matter, so I'm going to propose that we start with the big picture stuff first. Any objections?
It makes sense, because then people that aren't aware and join by mistake will get what they expect.
Yep.
Yeah, sure, cool.
Great. Okay. And then people who want to do more office hours things, like, they can welcome to hang out on the Zoom meeting afterwards. Like, okay, so great. Lucas, you have an announcement. This looks good.
This is a really short one. I just want to say that all my PRs have merged. even the Bootstrap Signer one, and I'm really glad for that. That means we're feature complete at head, which is great. And still, well, please file issues, please test it as much as you can. Jacob found a bug yesterday, something that needs to be fixed. I think I approved it. Derek could give his LGTM if he hasn't.
I just reviewed it during the meeting. So
yeah, cool.
Sweet.
And Sarah, yeah.
Oh no, just awesome.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, I also have, I synced with David Eads on an issue with we're still like, the dummy pod we're deploying is still hanging around. It has been doing that since 1.4. I think I found an issue thanks to David's help. And I'm going to submit a bug PR for that as well. Yeah, Luke, was it you who wrote? Now we have some churn sound.
What's that? Sorry?
Yeah, so
I think I can hear your computer, Lucas. I think it's making noises.
No, there's someone else. I can hear it too.
Okay, I got it. I muted
okay,
someone.
yeah. We have that one, integrate cluster bootstrap /discover with Kubernetes core. If Joe could give a short status update in the doc as asked by Ihor, it would be great. And we have to do the same with the other one. Let's see if I find the link to that one. And yeah, so we should update, give a short like description on the features issues, so the PM groups, the PM group knows what we're up to. And yeah, please test kubeadm at head when 1.6 beta 2 is released. I expect it to be like both feature complete and like nearly bug free. So I think we should be in good shape, but that requires testing as well. So like, since there have been a lot of refactors, a lot of new issues, like when you're editing, modifying 5,000 lines of code in 2-3 weeks, it's hard to get 1 or 2 lines wrong. So please test. Then we have, well, the liveness probe porting. Jacob has fixed that one. What should we do with the Docker 113 and CE version?
Yeah, I can link the PR that I have open for that. It's kind of just hanging. We need to do something about it. So
yeah, let's discuss that on Slack later. And I have a solution to the deletion of the dummy pod, I think. And the last issue is kubeadm reset should not drain and remove the node. We added this in 1.5, but due to the RBAC things that got added into 1.6, we have to remove the functionality. It's the cluster administrator that should drain and remove nodes from the cluster. So that's a small thing as well. But that was my point. Then Anders and Marco sent, well, I don't know if it was to Kubernetes dev, but Brian Grant forwarded it, the announcement incubation thing, to SIG-cluster-lifecycle, the mailing list. And I just think we should briefly talk about it here and see what we think. Feel free to present your work.
Yes, hello.
Hey.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically you can look at Cube now as a Terraform wrapper for kubeadm. And the motivation why we did that is because we needed to speed up the deployment time of a cluster. So with Cargo, takes quite a lot of time, and basically we use Kubernetes to do data processing of biology stuff. And we have our workflow systems that send basically containers through jobs to Kubernetes in order to process data, basically. So we want to have a cluster up and running in, I don't know, less than 10 minutes, do the analysis on a bunch of nodes and tear down the cluster, save it somewhere and tear down the cluster. So having to wait 40 minutes with Cargo, it wasn't an option for us. And also another motivation is that in Cargo, through Terraform, there are not so many supported cloud providers. So we needed to be able to spawn cluster to Amazon, to Google, and to OpenStack installation. So this was a very brief summary of why we came up with a new deployment tool. And right now we have quite a bit of stuff into it, but it's still not so many line of code. And we want to decouple like the GlusterFS part from the deployment of the cluster, the Kubernetes cluster. So basically, the idea is that use Kubernetes to get up and running a Kubernetes cluster with kubeadm, and then do the rest with Helm in order to get your application stack up and running in order to do the data processing.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I think that sounds great, and I'm glad that you did it on top of kubeadm. That's really cool. I think it has quite a lot of similarities with kops and with Cargo itself. And since it's in kops and Cargo's roadmap to integrate and build on top of kubeadm, that's our long-term goal, to have kubeadm as a like turtle at the bottom that does the heavy stuff, the boring things, and then do the fun stuff on top that's specialized for your platform and exactly for your needs, for data processing or cluster or whatever. Yeah, Justin.
But I mean, I would say that even if it was like an exact overlap with kops, that wouldn't preclude it being a good idea or it going into incubation or even the graduating from the incubator. We decided to do like many installers, not one installer. So
yeah, I think this looks really great. I mean, as a way of like capturing, I mean, and if it's useful to people, then that's awesome. If it's a way of sort of encoding a set of things that people might want, a way of that people may want to configure their clusters, and people find it useful, then it's great. Is there a specific ask here, though? Is the question like, should this go into incubation or what? Or is it just like, hey, we built this thing, this is cool, sort of presentation?
I mean, so basically we are part of a European project for metabolomics stuff, and basically one criticism that we got is that we didn't push this upstream. So I was looking to understand if we can make it an incubator project or if we can make it part of an existing project. But I think we will be more keen to have it as a separated incubator project, like it will be less work for us to integrate it in Cargo. And I think Cargo has also a little bit different scope. Like they want to install on bare metal on a lot of different distributions, while we are gonna support CentOS at a certain time, but it's not really number one priority for us. Like we just need to have a cluster up and running. It doesn't really matter for the distribution that we have. So yeah, long story short, we are interested in into have it as an incubator. Like that would be great. And I have one question. So we have I've been reading a bit this incubation process. We have a couple of champion, and I think this European project is a very good champion. So we already have a beta release of this European project metabolomics processing tool that is based on Cube now. And the question is, how should we look for a sponsor? Because this is the second requirement. So how does this work?
As Brian Grant said in the mailing list, I think there's a general consensus at the moment to not accept, at least not so many incubation projects, if I understood the message correctly.
This is the same thing I understood. So
due to the like amount of sprawl between projects, to be honest, that was his message, and to some extent I agree, but I still like this is all about diversity. So I'm really, I think it's great that you have this project, but I still wonder if there's an easy way to integrate with Cargo, like to make Cargo maybe more modular and have it as options in Cargo to do these things, like you have an option file or a configuration management thing or something that you could enable this Cube Now mode or something. Would that make sense?
I think to rephrase that, you might want to have a specialized playbook with potential specialized configuration for how you do forking. Because right now, the default forks, usually for Ansible, are not set high. I know that when we wanted to blast clusters fast, we had to, have a fat machine with a lot of memory and set forks to like 200. And that allowed us to build out a cluster in like 20 minutes of several hundred nodes. And there's ways to optimize it and set a custom configurized playbook. That's a way of me reinterpreting what Lucas might have just said.
Well, also, if you should also have a look at how Kops does it. Kops typically brings up a cluster in like 3 to 5 minutes. So I feel like this might be, I don't even understand like why we're talking, like why is it taking 40 minutes and 20 minutes? It just feels weird. Something's wrong.
Can I just make a comment here? Why Cargo takes so long? We support so many components and options and extra providers and flexibility that Ansible just is a bad platform for this, because every single task gets evaluated, every single loop gets evaluated, even if that role or module is skipped. So to make things worse, Ansible 2.2.1 release made iterating through every loop 3 times as slow, because every variable is reevaluated on each iteration. So it's like a perfect storm right now. We need to really tune down the playbooks so that we only call certain combinations for certain conditions, but really you're spending half the time doing evaluations for tasks you're not running. So yes, it's a problem, and we're working on it. But 10 minutes is still a stretch for Cargo in the next month or so.
Yeah, have you considered using Terraform as an option, or
we use Terraform just for provisioning as an option. And Cargo's main scope is not provisioning. It's pre-deployed nodes with minimal OS is the ideal target. You come up with the information, you make an Ansible playbook, and you run the playbook. Cargo is a playbook. It's not end-to-end.
Okay, so I'm just going to... Sorry, Justin. I'm just going to interject because we're out of time. I mean, this is an interesting conversation. Please feel free to carry it on now if people want to stay on the call or on Slack. So this looks like a cool project. I don't think... does anyone want to volunteer to sponsor it for incubation?
The sponsor needs to be one of the top-level owners of Kubernetes.
I think it's isn't it a champion?
I think, well, isn't the champion, well, one of them, at least, one of them needs to be a top-level owner of Kubernetes, and there's like 12 or something of them. So no one I see, at least, is at the call at the moment. But given Brian's message, which is like one of the highest owners of the project, I think it might be a little bit hard. So I think it would be great to like work with Cargo and see if you could like join forces and try to incorporate what you've done in the speedy mode, or work with Justin and see, like, I know Justin is working on getting GC support into COPS, bare metal eventually. And I mean, I think it could make total sense to do at least test and talk to those people first. And then I saw, while looking briefly at your project, that you have AJ as one like future milestone, and then it's, well, come and work with us KubeADM hackers, and like.
Yes, that's the idea. Like, just wait for KubeADM to provide this, and then we have it. So
yeah. Or even better, come and help us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't wait, come help.
Yeah, for sure. Like as time permits.
Awesome. Were you going to say something?
No, it's fine. I was just playing with the mute button.
Okay, speaking of time permitting, we're out of time. So thanks, everyone. And see you next week. Cheers. Bye.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.